I think it's really interesting to see so much commonality in the environment for where you're living and working to our environment, the sugarcane. It's very similar countries. It's great to have that context, and also to introduce some of these terms like agroecology, which now if we want to invite the other panel guests come down and we can talk a bit more about these ideas around agroecology and the guys from syntropic farming and permaculture, and how all of these sort of alternative models around food sustainability can work so well together. So if Scott and Victor and Sharon and Eurico all want to come down to the front, come and join us. Take a seat on the hay bales, on the carpet. Do you want to come down as well, please? Have we got enough hay? Have we got enough carbon to sit on?
Yes, we have carbon.
Excellent.
Carbon soon.
So, Scott, wave your hand. Scott is a fourth generation farmer who's now experimenting with a team currently co-developing a new model of agroecology called syntropic farming. And I'm sure this is something, given that it's becoming quite an exciting new model and a new idea in terms of agroecology, we're going to hear more and more about. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more from these guys on that. And Victor, who's been working with Scott for, I didn't catch how long?
Probably 5 years.
5 years. And he's bringing this new model over into Australia and sharing the knowledge here. These guys are working on a property using this model in Chillingham near Wollongbar. Sharon, who many of you may know her face, is a local permaculture guru, has a fantastic little property in the main street of Mullumbimby, where she's been operating with permaculture principles. She's a local permaculture and sustainability trainer and a project coordinator with a passion for urban farming, local food projects and community gardens. She's been farming for over 2 decades and has an experience in design and management of both urban and rural permaculture systems. She's deeply committed to sustainability and is an inspirational teacher who walks the talk. Her suburban block, as I mentioned, is right in town in Mullumbimby and is an award-winning showcase of urban sustainable living. Sharon believes that permaculture is not about becoming an expert, but rather a generalist who gathers skills and knowledge from many other disciplines to create an integrated system. And Eurico's also a permaculture teacher and designer. Excuse me. And also a holistic management teacher and founder of Holos Designs in Kingscliff. His courses and community outreach programs are aimed at empowering people to be the change they want to see in their local communities. Eurico teaches and designs science behind permaculture and how to integrate these ideas into an urban living and lifestyle. So it's a great mix of diverse ranges of these ideas around agroecology, which we touched on a little bit this morning. It's really an exciting way that we can start to explore the beyond organics concept, and perhaps that's a good question to start with. How do you see what you're doing in permaculture or agroecology or syntropic farming? How do you see that as beyond, I guess, organics, which is, I think we're all pretty au fait with that as a terminology. Where is it you're taking that? What's the start?
Hello. I'm a third generation farmer. I come from a family of farmers in Brazil, and I guess what's related to this question is being organic just means we're buying a label. We're outsourcing the evaluation of our food, and we're giving someone else or another organization the power to choose what that food means for us. Now, part of what I do, my background studies with community development, and part of that was done with social media. And I guess what we can do is to bring together producers and consumers in a way that we just make it obsolete, this thing of having these labels. If you know where your food comes from, if you know the person who grows your food, and if you know how that's done, that's obviously beyond organic. You have just, updated the label. In my view, so to do that, that's what we need to do, just bring people together. Then the label won't mean that much anymore.
Well, I guess as an urban farmer, in the urban context, we're thinking about more we're coming from a space of working with nature, but taking advantage of the urban landscape, so taking advantage of the waste around us and using that to grow our food and concentrating on not creating waste. And this is something that we would think of.
Yeah, from my point of view, beyond organic or regenerative is, well, to my mind, being organic is one thing. And we're talking about whole systems. When we talk about ecology, it's a complex interrelationship with all elements on planet Earth. And when you're talking organic, just the labelling, it's chemical free. You can grow that however you want, as long as it passes the test. It's got no poison in it, it's got no artificial fertilisers or anything like that, but it doesn't call into question all of the ways that we grow that by the diesel inputs, the ploughing, the monocultures that we still grow, which are organic. They just have one thing. But when, and so there's it's a linear concept within a whole system, and so with regenerative agriculture, agroecology, we rely on our management practices to feed the system. So we rely on using that ecology to put in, and then that goes right into that complexity, the interrelationship with plants, birds, animals, sunshine, water systems, the whole lot. And at the end, the product is organic by nature. If you try to interfere with that whole system's interrelationship, just by adding one man-made compound somehow, you're going to blow it. So the feedbacks are the passive feedbacks of the fact that it is organic, but it's looking after country and systems.
Yeah, kind of, just for me, organic is just another tool in a capitalist society. It just becomes another brand, another product, but the root cause of the problem is still being aggravated. It's a system that is dependent on external inputs, that relies heavily on compost or other inputs. But after all, it's not actually bringing life back into the soil. It's not actually conserving water. It's just following the same recipe that the chemical farmers are doing, but just with different inputs. So even though we are getting a better quality product, it still has a very short lifespan. We are kind of beyond that model. We do need practices in which we can produce organic, but at the same time we have to start bringing life back into the soil and stop externalizing all those costs to the general society, because we are just burning some of the accumulated fat that we had, that the planet has accumulated over billions of years, and we're just relabeling it, repackaging it, and just finding a new product in a capitalist society, which unfortunately is not going to last forever. It is better for you, but it's just not better for the planet, I don't think.
And nowadays, beyond organic means beyond supermarkets. So what we have to do is just grow our food closer to home, buy our food from our neighbors. That means that what we have to is to regenerate the land. The land has been abused for many generations now, and so we have to put life back into the soil and have a meaningful interaction with the land and try to read the landscape. We have to regenerate whole landscape. It's not enough just a couple of acres. We can do that with permaculture very well, but the whole landscape and the whole human scape needs to be regenerated. So that's what I'm learning, and we have to connect all the dots: land regeneration, food production, local food systems, and also as in general as a society, we have to stop this madness of globalization and stop the mines. In the morning I was gave a presentation about how the wind energy is taken over by big corporations that are destroying my hometown. I didn't show it that right now my farm is surrounded by big windmills, you know, and we are the only ones resisting that. We're not selling, we're not leasing our land to that, because all that energy produced there is sent to other countries by big corporations, and is sent directly to supply energy for Walmart, for cement factories and things, and mining companies. So we are stopping that. We are against that type of land grabbing. So we have to have this our generation have to resist and renew at the same time. That's what I understand.
Thank you. The concept, this syntropic farming, perhaps now is a good opportunity for you guys. If you want to just explore that as a terminology, it's probably a pretty new concept to most people. Do you guys just want to give 5 minutes or so and just explain that out a bit more?
Yeah, well, syntropic farming is essentially it's a self-describing term in the sense that syntropy takes place, which is the opposite of entropy. So essentially, through the practice, the system gets more complex over time. Through the practice of the agriculture, biomass increases as a natural feedback. That's the long and short of my point of view.
The way I understand syntropic farming, it's basically the planet has a way that it functions, very different from all the other planets in the system. Earth tends to accumulate some of the energy that it receives, and through accumulation, it then has abundance and it's able to share and grow. So, and by doing that, it then increases its complexity. And it's able to accumulate more and share more. And basically, what today's society, we've been just burning what the earth has accumulated over the years through oil and things like that. So basically, the idea behind syntropic farming is trying to work with that concept in which we grow food through accumulation. So we try to accumulate energy through life. So basically we try to grow life and encourage life. And then through that we are able to have abundant system in which we can even feed ourselves. So we feed the planet, we feed the soil biology, we conserve water, and as a byproduct we are able to feed ourselves. So basically just try to tap on that natural system that we have on the earth, which we can accumulate external energies through photosynthesis, and through accumulation then we are able to feed everything and everyone, pretty much.
I'll just add to that too that conceptually Victor's right, that's what it is, but what has happened is fellow Ernst Gosch in Brazil has actually developed a method which does this. So the concepts are all there. We understand that through physics and our science. This is all well understood. But the revolution is how it's actually being developed as a practice. And there's a specific way of doing it. And this is based on specific functions of the way plants turn sunshine into biomass and the way that they express through their life cycles. And this has been turned into an agricultural method.
I would love to hear an explanation of how the system is managed, how to achieve that. Just simply.
I was about to touch upon that. The other thing that happened in Brazil that made this thing so successful in Brazil is that the understanding of the natural succession, the farmer then is able to use all of the layers like we do in a food forest in a permaculture way, But Anna's was very adamant that the small farmers, they needed to be profitable from the beginning, producing abundant and organic food or beyond organic food. So using all of these strata and managing the succession in a way that the farmer is always harvesting something according to that flow of the natural succession. So it gets a time that if you want to have greens or other horticultural projects, you have to actually start another plot or get timber trees down to open up sunshine and restart. It's very clever, it's profitable from the beginning, and that's the only reason why it's taking off so well in Brazil, because these small farmers can actually do that and make it work financially as well.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting model that I think a lot of people are starting to look at, and especially in this community where there's been quite a strong following of the permaculture movement. It's almost a natural succession for our local agricultural systems to start to develop. So hopefully, and you guys are running some courses, and hopefully people will get into contact with you guys to learn more about it. There was another term that came up in your discussion, Alejandro, silvopastoral. Do you want to give us a bit more information on what that means?
Yeah, it's the combination of livestock and trees. So any syntropy among them, between them, that's called silvopastoral system. We have to design and manage the land. So at least in the tropics, the cattle, especially the land races, not the milk cows, but more of the crossbred cows, would browse legume trees as a fodder. So you stop buying fodder. You have the fodder that you just grow it, and they will prune the trees, browse the tree, or you just go in with a machete and cut the branches and throw them. So they will browse that. That's one thing. The other, you just grow like Leucaena trees or coral trees around the boundaries, along the fences, and that effect of the trees putting nitrogen and also a lot of organic matter into the soil will help the grass to grow. And you always have to manage the shade, because the grass is sensitive. Some grasses can tolerate up to 40-50% shade, but not all of them. So you have to know what's your environment, the context, and try to put as many trees as possible, so you feed the soil through the trees, because the trees will first pump the nutrients from down below to the branches and leaves, and then the cattle would eat the leaves, or they will drop down and feed the soil, the life in the soil. So it's more or less that system in different arrangements, small plots, scattered trees, in a line, lined up. Many combinations you can do. You have to research some systems. Some work in one place, some don't. So this basically, and you benefit from having trees on the farm.
So again, it's an example where we're starting to stack different agricultural models onto the same space and benefiting both from a land perspective, but also from an economic perspective. And certainly it's becoming obvious that as farmers are now starting to recognise these agroecological models, that there's financial benefits and financial rewards for doing that, including less input costs. So whereas we've seen in the past, I think as you're acknowledging it, that organics is a system by replication or reproducing the old ways, just changing the products that are being used. Now we're starting these ideas around permaculture and agroecology. It's a systemic approach. It's how we're involved within the system. So as farmers or as growers or as gardeners or as producers, how do we see ourselves as a part of that ecology rather than just practitioners of an ecological system?
just to see yourself as an organism within the greater organism. Just take out that holistic approach and integrate.
Just to paraphrase, the Swiss guy in Brazil that started some tropic farming, he says something that's I think pertinent to what we're discussing, which is we're not the most intelligent species within the systems. We're just another species within that system, and we need to play by the rules and go with that. So he says that we, instead of fencing off forests, fencing off parks and things like that, we actually need to work with the ecological inclusion of the human beings in those systems. We need to develop ecological literacy so that we can actually interact with those systems as an intelligent part of that system. If we can do that, we can manage much more and still be regenerating the place instead of everywhere we go, we tend to mess things up. So if we see ourselves in that way, like Scott's saying, like Ernest says in Brazil, it makes more sense. But it takes a lot of effort because we have to understand how the system works. And we're not taught those things. We're just not used to them. So we need to invest in knowledge so that we can then interact with the system as a part of that system.
Well, it has to be implemented in school, isn't it? Learning about how to treat the land.
Can you repeat the question, please?
It's no question, it's a statement. This has to be taught at school. You know, the education has to be
Agreed, yeah.
kicked. You know, all these people be encouraged.
I'm not going to discuss this school now, but agreed.
Now, where does technology fit into this? Does it also hinder what's going on?
Can you repeat? So, within, if I got your question right, where technology kicks into that, sorry, part of, I'll just explain my point of view. Victor and Scott, they work with syntropic farming, and that's what my family does back in Brazil as well. So please jump in anytime and help me out. Because it was developed in Brazil, the scale of the machines, investment and technology is much smaller. Simply because if you need to do, for instance, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, or like a key line system or dams and that sort of stuff in Brazil, most of the farmers won't be able to do it. So you need to start with a system and you need to understand the principles and not the recipe. Because the recipe, if you try to replicate like a biscuit, you know, cut everywhere, it sometimes doesn't work. Like Scott was saying, if you get the principles, you can apply. Now it can be done from hand tools and it can be done with tractors and big machines. Another thing about this that it's actually a very good solution is you can scale up or down.
But I'm thinking more of the internet side of things. You get a lot of mistruths on that, and you've really got to sort through the information that you receive and figure out what's true and what's not true. And it seems to be, over the last 14 years or so, it seems to be, you know, things were reasonably good back there, and now they're heading down a fairly steep curve to misinforming people.
What works?
Misinform me about what? So I didn't quite get the question. Sorry.
Well, you're talking particularly here farming.
Yes.
And you know, even like a small backyard garden, you want to find out something. How do you grow something? How do you do this? How do you do that? You go onto the internet. You can read 10 posts, and if those 10 posts, one will be right, and then every other one will be a little bit right, but not right enough.
Not quite.
So I'd like to answer that just because I really believe in keeping things simple when you start, and just remembering to start really, really small, and you know, practice all of those things that people teach you, and talk to other people who are practicing it, and start small, start at your back door, and just experiment. And you know, no systems are going to be the same, and no practice is going to be the same. So.
In this site you live as well.
Yeah, and different climates.
I learned from my grandfather. He was born in the late 1880s. 1880s. he taught me a lot. But that's not happening anymore. My children didn't want to listen to what I had to say and went off and did their own thing. Now they're starting to look, but you know, I don't know how many years I've got left, but it's not all that much. We tend to repeat things. You know, somebody will learn something and then it'll disappear, and then somebody will relearn it. And particularly in a lot of the agriculture and well, the type of housing and things like that, things just get messed up and then relearned or refound.
Yeah, so I mean, Brian, who just spoke earlier, who teaches holistic management, one of the main things he'll say is that as a human being, what you can always be sure of is that you're going to be wrong. Everything you do is going to be wrong. So if you just talk to people, assume that you're going to be wrong, and start small, trial and error.
And look for the earliest signs that you were wrong. So that you can then, But look, I just want to make two comments. One is about the school system, and another one is about what you're saying, that the learning, the generational learning in the families broke. And that's true. And our colleague was saying that we need these schools to teach these things. And yes, we need these schools to teach these things, but we need to teach these things. So I have kids, and they are learning. Now, in relation to that, what you're saying is that it seems that it's getting harder and harder to sift through the knowledge that we have online today. Well, assuming that we are wrong, like Sharon just said, the question is not that. The question is, how can we sift through and how can we make better use of it? Because it's a double-edged sword in the sense that never before we had so much access to important knowledge as we have now. And that's only possible because of internet and social media. Now that comes at a cost, which is we need to sift through this knowledge. Now to do that, you need to do what Sheila's saying, which is you need to get your hands and start doing something and assume you're going to be wrong. Because then you look for the earliest signs that you were wrong and then you can correct those mistakes. But there's no other way today. And although I do want these schools to do something, I'm not expecting the school that my children are in to do it. I'm doing it myself because it's going to take ages for them to do that. So, you know, we need to take responsibility for a few things. So that's where I draw the line.
We have a fair amount of good teachers, but they tend to have their hands tied from the powers that be. The education department would be the bloody silliest organisation that could possibly try to do anything with it.
I think what we see down here is a really great example of how within a community we have amazing educators right here, and that in many cases you don't have to go sifting through any information at all. Come and do a course. Come and have direct knowledge and direct experience that you can take as an application process for your local community. Did you?
I just want to add something about education. We try and homeschool our kids and communally and alternatively. But if they decided not to stay on the land, we have to find someone that is willing to stay on the land, and that's what he said was correct about systems that work right away and that make money. So that's to attract the new generations. So, and you don't have to inherit the land to your nephews or your children. It can be anyone, because the land is going to be kept healthy and be profitable at the same time. That will attract the younger generation.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the original question about how do we see, what part do we play in the system, and I think we can play a pivotal role, just so we have been playing, but we just need to put ourselves now as part of nature, because we spent the last 50, 100 so many years as putting ourselves above nature or beside nature and trying to control it or whatever. So basically, I think we play a pivotal point in understanding the rules of the game, let's call it, and by doing so and working with nature, not against that, we can actually make the whole regenerative processes much quicker. We can let nature do it by itself, which will happen eventually. But understanding the functions and the underlying principles behind it, we can actually speed it up and recover the mess we've made much quicker. But for that, we actually have to see us as part of nature, not something that's beside, above, or below it, but we are nature. And we have a forest within us, we have the forest outside us, we have the forest in our community. So the more we work with that forest system in our aspect, inside ourselves and outside ourselves, we can then just move really quickly.
Alejandro was talking about his place in Mexico, and it's usually people dealing with agroecology. They tend to go homeschooling. They tend to go living on intentional communities, and the reason why is it because, in general, I'm just going to be blunt, I'm sorry, but in general, the Western culture is a monoculture. It takes over, it rules everything, and it ruins everything. Now, if we want our children to have a sense of how perennial, of how agriculture should be, they need to understand how long it takes to grow a tree. And that's not something you do in a short time in school. And another thing that happens in the agroecology movement in Brazil, they're questioning the boxing of our activities as well. So we go having fun in a place and in a time. We go learning in another place and in another time. We go have family time in another place and another time. And these things are not clear-cut. We don't stop learning, we don't stop having affection, and we don't stop interaction with nature ever. We are part of it. But we're losing that sense because of the way we've been educated, because of the way we've been brought up. So part of what we're discussing here today goes a little bit beyond, or way beyond, the production of perennial systems, which is how do we think about them and how do we guarantee that the next generation will actually take on and keep doing it, because it will outlive us if we do it properly.
That's a good way for me to introduce, I guess, the next question I have is one of the more exciting elements around agroecology that I find is this concept of biomimicry, and having worked with you, Sharon, into the permaculture ideas and now seeing the implications of that within agroecology, I wonder if you could comment, because ecology is such a complex thing, and we could be here for weeks talking about it, but that as a unique element when we're talking about introducing livestock into forest systems, and as you've seen, the food forest that you built on your property now bringing bird life back to that environment, and certainly with the work that you've done even at the community gardens as biomimicry models of how we can learn from nature and use those as processes. How potent do you think that those are within the systems, with the much broader systems that you're working in?
Well, I guess one of the great things for me working on a small quarter-acre block in town is that my system is really intensive, and I just really noticed this after coming from such a large farm before, that I know all the trees really intimately. I know all the little separate systems, the parts of the whole of the whole of the whole. And I mean, I guess for me, nature is such a great teacher, and nature is also really forgiving. So I'm a lifelong farmer, and I truly don't believe I've got a green finger. You know, it's quite easy for me to kill something, but just, you know, getting into my garden and interacting, observing, and just, I don't know. I forgot the question, but nature. It was a long question, was it? I always come back to just keeping things simple, just starting really small and getting your hands in the dirt and getting to know your garden is the most, we can make things really complex, and, nature is really complex and ecosystems are really complex, but at the same time they're so simple. We just have to be in them, I guess.
Well, the crux of the question was biomimicry and how that as a simple component has worked for you.
I guess it's worked in that it helps me understand my systems better. Honestly, it helps me understand my own part in the system more than anything.
Well, in terms of syntropic farming, there is basically biomimicry it's how we're doing. It's basically understanding copy nature. That's what we try to do. So basically, what we do is we work and try to understand the function of each of those elements within the system, and trying to understand how and when they come into play, and when it's time for them to leave. Because a mature forest doesn't just comes. There's a whole successional train that follows. First you have the grass, and then the early succession, and you keep evolving into those. So when we're setting up a syntropic plot, basically try to then understand where we want to take that, and how much complexity can we fit into that, and how many successional laps can we put it in that. Just trying to then exactly copy how a forest gets to be how we are. If you just plant let's say a red cedar, which is from a climax species or whatever, in a pasture land, it's not going to do so